Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just back again with another video. Just going to talk a little bit about, just things that I've been thinking about, just maybe a bit more personal message, and just things that I'm thinking about related to my channel, and just the message that I share. And, I'll also want to talk about the mark of the beast prophecy and, the timeline that I've set forth regarding the end times, how there's going to be a 3.5 year tribulation period, 1,260 days of great tribulation. And I believe Revelation 11, and really the whole book of Revelation, supports that it will be headquartered in America, by the two witnesses. And so that's where they will be focused, and residing and administering the plagues worldwide, is here in America. What the Bible says is spiritually Sodom and Egypt, where our Lord was crucified, refers to America. And so for me, if that doesn't apply to America, obviously I'm incorrect on Revelation 11. They would be somewhere else. And then for me, it actually means really my whole narrative doesn't make sense, because spiritually Sodom and Egypt, I quote, need that to interpret a lot of other verses, not just that one. Even Deuteronomy 28:68, where the Bible says that the Israelites will be sent into slavery on cargo slave ships to Egypt. And so then there's, to me, ambiguity as to like where that is, and like in one instance, it's saying spiritually Egypt is in Israel. And then in other place, it's saying that it's America, to fit that prophecy. And so my whole, my video that I posted, and I'll link it below just for people to check it out, the long one on Revelation, and then the shorter one with the timeline, more succinct summary of what I'm teaching, the whole thing would fall apart, and so it doesn't mean that I give myself a bit of leeway, in this. And I don't want people to think that I'm just going to, beat myself over the head for what I shared, because it's sincere. I didn't do it for any other reason, but looking at the Bible and correlating it with what's going on in the world, and then vice versa, looking at what's going on in the world and correlating against the Bible. And to me, it's a very, very good fit, strong correlation with, from a very mathematical perspective. I consider a very, very strong correlation. And if it wasn't, I wouldn't push it. I needed to see more, or things were unclear and just contradictory and all that kind of stuff. But to me, the correlation is very, very strong. And, that's why I'm, quote, all in, in the times that we live in, and, that kind of thing. And so I really have no choice. I don't want people to think that I'm a martyr, because even if the Bible didn't exist, I would not be able to function in corporate America anyway, because it's just boring, And so that's my overarching issue with the world right now. I never want to come across like I'm on some martyr for God, and just sacrificing everything. I really haven't sacrificed anything. Even if the Bible did not exist, or I didn't have an interest in the Bible, I still would not engage with this. I'd be able to engage with the society just because of the way I'm programmed, and I didn't come up with myself. If I could have programmed myself and the Bible wasn't true, I would have figured out a way to make myself just more apt to like play along, and just deal with boredom, and that kind of thing. And just not worry so much about needing to be honest and like transparent and like sincere, and really working towards something, bigger or anything. I would just have less of that kind of stuff. And we all do, I believe, to some extent or another. But, if I could have, quote, made myself, that's what I would have needed in order to fit in. So it's not a martyr kind of situation. It's just kind of a coincidence, which to me is part of the reason why I push it so much, the Bible, that the system has exhausted me and many of us, I believe, to the point of the only thing left is God, and people have different gods, and I've been drawn to, I believe, the God of the Bible. And so that's the main issue. But I think that I just want people to know that the cool thing about the times that we live in now is that the God of the Bible, to me, is has less and less time to perform what I have taught, and shared on my channel, and I like that because before when I made the prediction that America will be destroyed by the end of 2023, I actually felt like I had lots of time because I'm like, this place is going down anyway. But then I came across this understanding of Revelation 11 to a more a specific sequence. I was like, man, well, that means that the headquarters of the two witnesses needs to still stand, quote, exist for at least 1,260 days for them to, do their assignment of administering the plagues in Revelation 16. So I'm like, damn, that's it was kind of a double hit because it was very encouraging because I was like, well, if that's going to happen on top of the already very obvious, financial demise of America, decline, then this definitely has to happen soon. What I teach has to happen soon. And then, but it was tough for me to digest because I was like, well, that doesn't leave that much time. That's pretty much the end times, God appearing to us in a earthly, worldwide sense. Those who pierce him shall see him. All eyes will see him. Needs to happen this year, or else, to me, my timeline just doesn't make sense. Because then the further, like next year or the year after, it's more and more likely that America's decline will strictly be just of a financial nature, and just may the strongest financially survive and that type of thing. And so inevitably we'll have like food shortages and stuff, but that's just a natural sort of, consequence of a declining economy, and then people fighting for scarce resources and stuff. So, which is prophesied in the Bible, but to me, that would just be a coincidence. It wouldn't be like, well, that's God doing that, because Revelation 16 lays out plagues and a sequence of plagues. And the first one is, sores on people with the mark of the beast. And so I want people to know that it may not even necessarily be that they have a physical thing in their body. The mark is a spiritual one where everybody on God's left-hand side has a spiritual mark. They are against God. You can sit there and talk to them, give them as many facts about flat earth and other truths, and they won't talk about it. They won't go there. Their brain is blocked. That is a spiritual mark. And then they are the ones that are going to go and get a physical mark, when that's forced. And so, if that is to happen, then there needs to be a large group of people who will just have a sore on their body, because God is telling the other people that are on earth at that time, those are the people that I've marked, and like, then he torments them with other plagues, the whole world. This is not just in one place. These two witnesses are going to be administering these plagues to everybody worldwide. And so that's going to make a decline of any economy or group accelerate. And so we're going to have a, quote, rapture, God taking away a group, which will be a hit to any economy just because we have a foreign invasion. It's just, a lot of these people will be poor, blind, and lame. So it's not like they're like the CEOs and stuff like that, or like airline pilots. They could be, but a majority of them will be people that the world has rejected, a nation not desired. And so they're already sort of on the fringes of society. And so I believe like things will just continue on, once they're gone. Obviously there'll be a need to have an explanation for why that happened. And so the government will make up some story about foreign aliens and, all that kind of stuff. And then maybe they'll start revealing certain truths about what they know. And then, to counteract this invasion, quote, invasion. But that alone is a hit, to the worldwide economy. And then there are all these plagues. If anybody reads Revelation 16, none of those have happened yet. No one would argue that, because the very first one involves the mark of the beast. And so it's all that stuff combined together. If we just look at a curve of America, no one would argue that America's on the inflection point happened. I believe the inflection point actually happened in 2014 economically, And then we're in sort of the late stages of it. But whatever position you take, it's definitely on a decline. No one would argue that. And even the mainstream saying that a recession is looming. And so that's obvious. And so all these other things in the Bible are going to, steepen that curve and accelerate it and really make the world unlivable for Americans, And so that to me is why I'm comfortable with what I share having to happen very, very soon, And so for me, for people who are out there, and into the Bible, and in particular into the book of Revelation, and making these kind of predictions, to me, I think that, first of all, that's a good thing to do, because it's a time in human history where there's no major thing that people have missed that is still lingering. That's not very, very possible any day. There's nothing like that. Like, people who've made videos in the past 20, 30, 40 years ago, the Mark of the Beast technology was not on the scene. Even if it was, behind the scenes with the government and stuff, it wasn't out in the forefront. And then wars and rumors of war also needed to happen. And then the most important piece of that is actually rumors of war, is that now we're in a time where there's like gossip. It's like there's all these, they're fighting with all these, this place is fighting against that place. They're just rumors. And the Bible's letting us know that it's not real beef, because there's a one world government in place worldwide, and Flat Earth proves that. And the financial, system also proves that. And so it's fake beef, and so this is another fulfillment of Bible prophecy, that all these things that have happened now, and then we're living in this time of just an incredible amount of deception and then also deception from the quote unquote truth community. And so that, to me, for people out there who are into the book of Revelation and make these kind of predictions, it's there's a good foundation there. Again, we don't know. We're still waiting to see if the God of the Bible exists, and that type of thing. And so there's still a huge element of faith involved. But I would say for people out there, it's an exciting time, really, to me, in the next year or two, because it's God has essentially been put into a corner. And I've put also myself in a corner, and I'm excited by it, because if the Revelation 11 doesn't mean 1260 days literally, that there will be two witnesses prophesying on the streets of America, then everything about my interpretation of the Bible is completely hopeless, because that 1260 doesn't mean 1260, it means something else. And then when I read Daniel, I can't take 1290 literally or 1335 literally, those days. And then I can't take Egypt as America. And so I can't take Deuteronomy referring to America. Then I don't know where the Jews are. And then who knows what's going on. It's what I'm trying to say is my whole theology falls apart very, very quickly, very quickly. And so again, it's exciting and scary at the same time. But for people to just understand my mindset about this is that I'm not going to be wrong and then just complain, oh no, sorry, just give me one more year. Like, no, I meant, the next year. I won't do that. I'll just be like happy that I personally just went into the Bible from an academic perspective, and I searched it out. I feel like I've done due diligence. I've looked at, other people's opinions. I've tested their spirit. I've examined my own intentions for why I want to know this. And I'm comfortable, with what I share. And if I'm wrong, and I'm only giving the God of the Bible this year, for people to understand, my mindset. And, I won't be upset, if it doesn't happen. And again, I'm not even saying that I need to be a part of this quote unquote rapture. My interpretation of the Bible cannot work unless it happens this year, and to me, actually very, very soon. And so, I'm fine with that. It's just, it means that for me personally, I would think of this as I've been burned once by evangelical Christianity years ago. I was lured back in, like a lot of people were, to the Bible with flat earth. And then it means I was wrong again. And so just for me, it's not like third time's the charm kind of thing. Like it's just, that's it for me. I would just take my place in human history as a person who is needed to uncover, did a little bit to help uncover the deception of the bull earth. And then that's it. and that kind of thing. And so, but I would say for people out there, again, I don't want this to be, discouraging for the people who are actually, hastening this day. But, we have a lot of ammo to believe that we're in the end times. Because again, this was a massive deception on a worldwide scale. And the Bible says the unique thing about God's children is that they will not be deceived. And so there has to be a major deception, not just one, but many. And we see that everywhere. And to be honest, now at this point, the deceptions are so stupid. And so a lot of people are catching on to it. And so even non-religious people. And so that to me, again, gives me a lot of comfort, that God will move soon, and act very, very soon, because a lot of people are on to how stupid this is. And so if it goes on and just kind of, continues on, then, it doesn't mean that the God of the Bible doesn't exist. But to me, it just, it means that his intervention is in a much later generation, and so there's nothing I can do about that, and so me personally, for my life, it means that he didn't exist in my life, because I was lured into a belief to push something that just did not manifest, and did not have any quote value at all in my life in any way, really, because again, the deception is so broad and so ridiculous that it isolates us who really believe it. And then it's not like we can go and practice things in the Bible when we're just kind of by ourselves, and isolated. Obviously, we can still maintain purity in a one-on-one relationship with God, but it just, it would be strange, that the God of the Bible would do that, would isolate many, many people, alienate them from society, and then, just have that be for really nothing, and that type of thing. That to me would be very, very strange if that was the narrative. And so for all of us, for me, if I end up being quote wrong in my prediction, I'm happy for people, and I become equally happy with both scenarios, because if there are people who like being here, and just enjoy this life, who am I to get in their way? It's like, whatever, that's fine. Maybe my standards for what I quote like in life are just higher, more sensitive to other people. And like, who am I? I'm just one person, out of billions. And so that to me, I have to be very, very humble and accept the fact that, I could just be getting out ahead of God too far, and all that kind of stuff. Or he may not exist, the God of the Bible. And so, I just think that for those, again, I would highly recommend people look at my video on the book of Revelation and understanding the sequence of end times, because if the Bible is true, that is the most safe interpretation. And it's not just the book of Revelation. The whole Bible will not make sense unless a person takes a position on the book of Revelation, because that's the test, the quote test of all the interpretation throughout the Bible. It gets tested with the book of Revelation, because that's when everything comes together. What does a person believe Egypt is? What does a person believe salvation is? What does a person believe about good and evil? What does a person believe is deception? What does a person believe about who God's chosen are, about where they will be physically? And all that kind of stuff gets examined in the book of Revelation. And then more fundamentally, it tells us what is God's appetite for evil. And so all those things are examined through the book of Revelation. And so I would highly recommend people watch that. I know it's like an hour and a half or something, but that to me, if my interpretation is not true, I just don't see how the Bible can be true in this generation, And so again, it doesn't mean that it's not true ever, but I don't see it. And I'd rather be very, very wrong than, just be right on a few things, And so to me, being right on a few things doesn't help, because a lot of religions are correct on a few things. That doesn't do anything, for me. I could have found some of those truths potentially elsewhere. And so, that's my mindset. And so that's why I would say I'm sort of pushing a bit more fervently and just with my own murmurings to God that this quote second coming will occur this year, and so pretty much has to, by the narrative and timeline that I've laid out. And so from a theological perspective, I believe it has to happen. From an end times, from a financial perspective as well. And morally, of course, Call for an Uprising's posting videos all the time about all the different weird things that are happening and all that kind of stuff. And we just know that there's a lot of actors, on earth. And so maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. And we're just supposed to be churned out, the people who want something better, And then also, I don't really have a better idea of what to do. It's like, okay, let's say the wealth was distributed more equally. It's like, well, what else do we do? It's like the system is already built up so much that it's dependent on God's non-existence, God being removed from all aspects of the world, of society. And so I can't, quote, fix this, even if the playing field was level. I wouldn't know what people should do. And to me, again, this is why God has made such a huge problem in the world. And the biggest problem is boredom, lack of purpose. People just don't have anything productive to do. And to me, if any God doesn't have an answer for that, then it doesn't really matter, whether he returns or not. If he returns and doesn't have any ideas for what we should be doing, that is more productive, quote, eternal fruit that will last, then what difference does it make, whether he returns or not? And so, I want to be an encouragement, obviously, to people that for any entity to have made this earth and put people on it and given us abilities and limitations, that's an incredibly creative God. And so just by, their fruit, their creative output. And so one would think, extrapolating that out, that he wouldn't be limited to this, and so that's where I stand, and that's what I believe, because God doesn't tell people what he has planned for them. He doesn't even tell those who are actually on his right hand side explicitly that they are, until he declares it. And so we don't even know, who's in the, quote, kingdom, except for like the obvious ones like John the Baptist and Moses and stuff. But so that to me is also encouraging, and I'm comforted by the fact that one of my biggest qualms with the world right now is that people are just bored. They don't have any, and I'm talking about people who even have jobs, functioning in society. They're not doing anything productive, especially the people at the top. They're just lying. And so that's, again, to me, proof that we're in the end times, because if the people at the top are forced to lie, that vibration has to trickle down. CEOs are getting on TV every single day lying about the economy. Coronavirus is causing this and that. Like those are just, that's why coronavirus and the tariffs and all that stuff are in the news, to narrate a slowing down economy. And so they have to lie, make up stuff, and so the vibration will obviously trickle down. And so no one's doing anything productive. And so to me, it's like, if God doesn't come, not just come, which is important, but also like return with something else to do, to me, it doesn't make a difference. It's like, it's better for God to not return then and just let this thing play out. But, obviously I believe strongly through my channel that is not the case, that not only will he return soon, to rescue his elect and to sift out, his right-hand side through the Great Tribulation period, but also provide those people with something to do in the kingdom of heaven that will bear fruit that will last. That's what the Bible teaches. And so, definitely for those out there, hang on to the faith. For me personally, since I put this narrative out, my understanding, to me, the safest and most sound interpretation of the entire Bible, it has to manifest soon. That's why when I hear other people talk about some timeline way down the road, I'm refuting that vehemently, because I don't see that as being a sincere interpretation of what's going on out there, and so that's where I can catch people, and I think we all can. In order for a person to understand and use the Bible to narrate the world, they have to know what's going on in the world very acutely, and then they obviously need to know the Bible and be very sensitive to the God of the Bible. And then those both will come together. So if a person's missing one of those or both, they're not going to be able to correlate the two, well or at all. And so that's what we see. I see people like Rob Skiba. I did a video recently. He doesn't have very good sound Bible interpretation at all. It's awful. And it's just as bad as his lack of understanding of what's going on in the world. And he's a flat earther, which is insane that somebody would be that off outside their window, living here in America and seeing the evil, firsthand. It doesn't make sense. So to me, there's something else has to be going on for people to be that far off. and that type of thing, you know. And so that would be strange if that were just kind of a coincidence that that's happening everywhere. And so this is very exciting time for those people. And so my channel will continue to focus on preparing for God's return, you know, and that's a spiritual preparation that happens on an individual level. You know, there is no corporate nothing group think startup meetup group or anything like that. No Flat Earth International Conference. Nothing can prepare us for reconnecting to the entity that made us, except preparing for him on an individual level. And I'm saying that it's not easy because it's very scary, you know. As much as it is exciting for those who will be exalted, it's also very, very scary because, like I said, Revelation is kind of the test for the whole Bible. Meeting God is our test of how we've lived our life, you know. And so I do believe God is extremely merciful and gracious, but it's also very, very scary because that judge, that teacher, is infinitely pure, you know, and he will know and examine and ask us about our intentions about everything, you know. And so I would just say for all of us, you know, that is the most important thing to prepare for, you know. And so a lot of people don't believe God exists, and then people who do believe God exists, many of them don't prepare, you know, for God's return or meeting God. And those who claim that they are, they're not doing it in a manner that the God of the Bible would find pleasing, you know. And so I would say any aspect of faith, charity, and all that kind of stuff, uplifting God's name in the times that we live in now, where God has been completely removed from really everything, every transaction on earth. You know, God's left-hand side has removed God from being involved in. I would just say whatever we can to, you know, reinfuse his name into our own life, and then in those transactions that we're involved in, will be rewarded, you know, by the God of the Bible directly. So hope everyone's doing well. Bye.